A Chinese startup just gave away for free a model that beats GPT 5.6 at coding. I am Kuro, and the detail that stopped me cold. Once weights like these are out, there's no button anywhere, not even at Moonshot, that pulls them back. Not a demo, not a benchmark trick. The actual weights downloadable by anyone. Here's exactly what happened. No exaggeration needed. On July 17, 2026, Moonshot AI released Kimi K3, 2.8 trillion parameters. 10 days later, on July 27, the full open weights followed, free to download, fine-tune and run yourself, which is not exactly how this industry is supposed to work. For years, there's been an unwritten rule at the frontier of AI. Whoever spends hundreds of millions training the biggest model sells access to it. They don't give it away. Moonshot just broke that rule in public with a model that actually competes at the top, and the reason why isn't the one you'd expect. If you just spend hundreds of millions of dollars training a frontier model, would you give the weights away for free? Take a guess at Moonshot's real reason before the next chapter. Here are the actual numbers, not marketing copy. On the Frontend Code Arena leaderboard, Kimi K3 scored 1679. That's ahead of Claude Fable 5 at 1625.6, Soul at 1618 and GLM 5.2 at 1987. Sounds like an easy one, right? So let's be precise about the claim, because each E1 isn't quite the full story. On the broader Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, Kimi K3 ranks 3rd overall, not E1 across the board. It's genuinely on par with Claude Opus 4.8 and GPT 5.5, but Claude Fable 5 and GPT 5.6 Soul still rank higher overall, which makes the give it away for free decision even stranger. So why would anyone hand over a model this good for free? Give away the weights, and every developer on earth starts building on top of your architecture, not our rivals. It's also a very public flex, proof that a Chinese lab can hit the frontier without needing the biggest budget. And that leaves closed labs with a much harder question to answer. If closed labs can't compete on price against a free open alternative this strong, what do they even do next? Genuinely no clean answer here. What's your prediction? Here's the real mechanism behind how a 2.8 trillion parameter model is even usable. It's a mixture of experts model, 896 total specialist subnetworks called experts. For every single token, a router activates just 16 of those 1896 experts. The rest they switched off, which sounds efficient until you ask, what happens when the router picks the wrong 16? A second real technique, Kimi Delta Attention or KDA. Most layers use cheaper linear attention, with only occasional full attention layers mixed in. In Moonshot's related research, this cut KV cache memory by up to 75% and decoded up to 6x faster at a million tokens of context, and that combination is exactly why this model exists at all. Put the sparse routing and the cheaper attention together, and here's why this was possible now. Moonshot itself claims roughly a 2.5x improvement in overall scaling efficiency versus its own prior model, Kimi K2. That's the actual unlock. Not a bigger budget, a smarter architecture converting compute into intelligence more efficiently. But efficiency like this always comes with a trade-off. Nobody's mentioned yet. If only 16 of 896 experts fire per token, what happens the moment the router picks the wrong 16? That's a real unsolved weak point in every movie model. Any guesses? This isn't the first time an open Chinese model shook the industry. There's a real precedent. DeepSeek R1, back in January 2025, matched OpenAI's O1 reasoning at a fraction of the usual training cost. Kimi K3 is a different shock, not just cheap but genuinely frontier scale and fully open. Or is it really? One more mix-up worth clearing up because headlines blur this constantly. Open weight means you can download and fine-tune the finished model. Kimi K3 is this. Open source would mean the training code and data are public too. That part Moonshot has not released, so how open is open really? 896 experts and only 16 show up to actually work. Honestly, that's the most relatable org chart I've ever seen. I too am one of the 16 who actually does anything. Weights this capable, freely downloadable, with no built-in usage restrictions to enforce, who's actually accountable if it's misused? Real messy question. What's your take? Remember that detail from the very start of this video, the one about no take back button? Here's the honest trade-off behind it. Anyone with enough GPUs can fine-tune away safety guardrails on a downloaded frontier capable model. A closed API can be monitored and shut off. A downloaded model, once it's out, simply can't be recalled. And recall isn't even the only limit here. And the headline needs one more honest asterisk. Kimi K3 beating GPT 5.6 is real, but specifically on coding benchmarks, not across the board. Overall, it still sits behind Claude 5 and GPT 5.6 sold on broader reasoning, though the story looks very different once you check the price tag. Even if you never touch the raw weights, the API pricing alone is disruptive. Kimi K3 runs at roughly 15 per billion output tokens, a fraction of typical closed frontier pricing. Cached input tokens drop to just 30 cents per million. Real, aggressive undercutting that makes you wonder how long closed pricing can even survive. If open models keep closing the gap this fast, do closed labs even keep their pricing power? Drop your bet on where this goes in 12 months. Zoom out, because this isn't just one company's product launch. Analysts tracking this closely now describe the gap between open and closed frontier models in months, not years. Every developer gets a genuinely frontier capable model to build on, no permission or API key required, which sounds great, until you hear the myth people are already getting wrong about it. One myth Kuro wants to squash before wrapping up. If it's free and open, anyone could have built it. Not remotely true. It still took a genuine architectural breakthrough. Sparse movie routing plus Kimi Delta Attention, not just a bigger checkbook. So what's actually worth remembering from all of this? Let's land this week's story in a few seconds. Moonshot released Kimi K3's full open weights, 2.8 trillion parameters, topping coding leaderboards. The real trick was efficiency, sparse expert routing, plus cheaper attention, not just a bigger budget. It's genuinely disruptive and, once downloaded, genuinely impossible to take back. That's this week's AI news. A free, frontier scale model and a rule about how AI gets sold quietly broken. New episode every week. Subscribe so you don't fall behind like I almost did. Would you trust a fully open frontier model over a closed one? Tell Kuro your bet in the comments.